Well, of course, it's not dead, but what has happened is that tolerance, which we, on the whole, used to regard as a positive term, more and more has become a very negative one, and that those who are afraid that the West, or Europe in particular, is going to be Islamized, that Europe is going to end up as Eurabia, that will be swamped by intolerant Muslims and so on, tend to see tolerance as, at best, indifference, at worst, a sort of cowardly appeasement and collaboration with Islamofascism. I think that's very regrettable, because tolerance in the sense of being able to live with people whose opinions or values you may not share, as long as everybody abides by the law and doesn't start, slitting each other's throats, um, I think is necessary. And you can't demand, and the United States is a good example of this, that the entire population shares exactly the same cultural values. It's impossible, nor should one demand it. I mean, the diversity is part of the societies we live in. Well, multiculturalism, if it's simply a description of a society which consists of various different cultures and languages, is one thing. We live in such societies. Multiculturalism as an ideology that somehow um, supposes that, or promotes the idea that people should stick to their own culture and not integrate or assimilate, and I think is wrong. But I think as an ideology, it's certainly on the way out. I don't think that many people believe in that anymore. I think that when you think of it in that dogmatic way, it harms minorities, because they're not encouraged to learn the skills or the languages that would allow them to take part in the societies and the economies in the way that would be beneficial to them. Well, India is rather a good example of a place which has institutionalized multiculturalism, in the sense that it includes a population of very different cultures and even ethnicities. And I don't just mean Muslims and Hindus. There are a huge number of different languages in India and so on. And somehow it works, even though there are instances of violence and tensions, and it's a democracy that's hugely problematic, but it works. They found a way of dealing with it that actually probably the West, in its more hysterical moments, could learn something from. Indonesia, likewise, was only a nation state because the Dutch colonial history made it that. I mean, it's highly diverse. Um, it's only just become a democracy, and showing many tensions. But I think, again, we should be paying more attention to Indonesia, because it's the country with the largest Muslim population in the world. And when people say Islam is incompatible with democracy, they should take another look at Indonesia. Well, the violence that comes from radical Islamists, for example, is sometimes blamed on a clash of civilizations, that somehow different traditions, one a non-Western one a European one, are sort of violently clashing. I think that's a mistake. It's a mistaken analysis, because the people who drop bombs in the London Underground, for example, are not guest workers from little villages in Anatolia, or the Rif Mountains of Morocco. They're people born in Europe and raised in Europe, who often grew up not knowing much about religion. And I think they indeed are often in a kind of no man's land, which is very often true of second generation immigrants, where they are alienated from the culture of their parents or grandparents, and feel rejected for one reason or another by the country in which they grew up. And of course, they're vulnerable, particularly vulnerable, to violent causes. All young people are vulnerable to them, but they are perhaps especially vulnerable.